It started subtly, almost like a scene straight out of a Stephen King novel. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in from the ocean one evening, blanketing our usually picturesque coastal town of Haven Bay. The news called it an unseasonal anomaly, a phrase that did little to quell the creeping unease that settled over the town. The fog was different. It wasn't the wispy, ethereal kind you see in movies. This was dense, an impenetrable white wall that swallowed everything in its path. Streetlights became ghostly orbs, casting an eerie glow on the deserted streets. Social media exploded with blurry photos and panicked reports. The fog was alive, some claimed, swirling and morphing in unsettling ways. The first reports of the smiling faces came a day later. Apparently, through the swirling mist, people were seeing distorted reflections, grotesque visages with impossibly wide, chilling grins. At first, I scoffed. Cabin fever and overactive imaginations, I figured. But then, Sarah, a barista at my usual hangout, showed me a shaky video on her phone. It was a grainy recording of the harbor, the fog thick enough to obscure the boats. Then, for a fleeting moment, a face, a pale, distorted reflection in the water, its mouth stretched into a horrifying smile. My stomach lurched. It wasn't a trick of the light. There was something unnatural about it. The smiles, it turned out, were contagious. Not literally, of course, but psychologically. The first documented case was Mrs. Henderson, the sweet old lady who lived next door. Her son found her staring out the window, a manic grin plastered on her face, muttering about happy faces. He said she kept repeating, "Join us, join the smile." News spread like wildfire. Fear replaced unease. The once bustling town became a ghost town. People barricaded themselves in their homes, curtains drawn, lights dimmed. Paranoia festered in the stagnant air, fueled by the occasional muffled scream or hysterical laughter piercing the fog-muffled silence. A group of us, the holdouts, the skeptics, huddled in my apartment. There was John, the conspiracy theorist with a tinfoil hat collection rivaling a NASA scientist's. There was Emily, the no-nonsense nurse with a steely gaze and a calming presence. And then there was me, Mark, the resident cynic, still clinging to the desperate hope that this was all some elaborate prank. But the fog, the smiling faces, and the escalating madness outside our door were no joke. The first incident in our group happened the night after we gathered. John, ever the paranoid, was convinced someone was watching us through the fog. He started rambling about government cover-ups and alien mind control. Then, his eyes widened, and a slow, horrifying grin spread across his face. Emily acted fast. She recognized the signs, the vacant stare, the manic glint in his eyes. With a practiced hand, she injected him with a sedative she'd managed to snag from her workplace. John slumped back, unconscious, the smile fading from his face. We watched him sleep, a heavy silence hanging in the air. The threat was real. It was inside the fog, and it was spreading through exposure, through witnessing the smiling faces. We couldn't stay cooped up forever. We needed to find a way to navigate the fog, to reach the source, if there even was one. We needed an explanation, a way to stop the madness before it consumed everyone. The next morning, armed with makeshift gas masks and headlamps, we ventured out into the swirling white abyss. The visibility was zero. We navigated by touch, following the familiar landmarks, the leaning oak tree by the corner store, the cracked sidewalk leading to the beach. Every rustle in the fog sent shivers down my spine. Were the smiling faces watching us? Was one of us already infected? The walk was an eternity. We stumbled upon abandoned cars, their drivers presumably succumbing to the madness. We heard screams cut short, muffled laughter echoing through the fog. Just when I was about to reach my breaking point, we saw it, a faint glow in the distance. It was the old lighthouse, usually a beacon of light and safety. Now, its once powerful beam was replaced by a sickly yellow glow. Hope flickered within me. Maybe, just maybe, the source of the fog, the entity behind the smiling faces, was there. We approached the lighthouse cautiously, the gas masks muffling our breaths and the fog muffling everything else. The closer we got, the more oppressive the yellow glow felt, like a physical weight dragging us down. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks was a welcome distraction from the unnerving silence within the fog. Reaching the base of the lighthouse, we found the heavy metal door creaked open a sliver. John, still unconscious from the sedative, was propped against the wall. Next to him lay a discarded gas mask and a crumpled note. Found the source. Don't follow. It's too late for me. Panic clawed at my throat. John, in his delusional state, had ventured inside, succumbed to the entity, and become another propagator of the smiling faces. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she quickly blinked them back. We can't leave him, she said, her voice firm despite the tremor. I felt a surge of respect for her, a nurse, a leader, the only one keeping us grounded. We debated our options. Turning back meant leaving John behind, condemning him to a fate worse than death, becoming another vessel for the entity's twisted smile. Continuing meant risking our sanity, potentially succumbing to the same fate. With a heavy heart, I picked up John's discarded gas mask and strapped it on. We go in together, I said, surprised by the newfound resolve in my voice. Emily nodded, her gaze unwavering. We weren't heroes, just a group of scared people trying to survive the nightmare our town had become. The metal stairs inside the lighthouse were cold and damp. With each step, the yellow glow intensified, a sickly hue that seemed to seep into our bones. The air grew thick with a metallic tang, making it difficult to breathe even through the gas mask filters. We climbed in silence, the rhythmic clang of our footsteps the only sound. Finally, we reached the top. The source of the yellow glow was a lantern hanging from the ceiling, casting an eerie light on a single figure standing in the center of the room. It was a tall, gaunt man, his clothes ragged and his face obscured by a long, tattered cloak. He seemed to be chanting in a language I couldn't understand, his voice low and guttural. As we stepped closer, the man turned towards us. He had no face, just a smooth, featureless expanse of skin where his face should have been. But from the darkness that seemed to emanate from it, two eyes gleamed, cold, intelligent, and utterly devoid of humanity. And then, it happened. The corners of that non-existent mouth stretched upwards, forming a horrifying, predatory smile. Terror threatened to consume me, but Emily stepped forward, her voice unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. Who are you? What have you done to our town? The faceless man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound that sent shivers down my spine. I am the Harbinger, he said, his voice distorted and echoing. And this is my harvest. He gestured around with a skeletal hand, encompassing the fog-shrouded town visible through the small window. We couldn't fight him. He wasn't human, not in the traditional sense. But perhaps there was another way. Remembering the note John left behind, I spoke up. John said it was too late for him, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. What if? I trailed off, unsure how to phrase the question. The Harbinger tilted his head, his empty eyes fixed on me. What if there's a way to undo it? I finished, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. The Harbinger remained silent, the smile never leaving his faceless head. The air crackled with anticipation. Then, he spoke. There is a way, he rasped, his voice a chilling whisper. But it requires sacrifice. A willing host to relinquish their smile, to become something else. A wave of nausea washed over me. Sacrifice? Become something else? The price for saving our town was horrifying, but the alternative? I looked at Emily, her face pale but resolute. We both knew there was only one choice. I'll do it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. No, Mark. Let me. For a moment, we locked eyes, two frightened people facing an impossible choice. Then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. We whipped around to see John, his eyes wide with terror, struggling against the straps of his gas mask. He'd woken up, the sedative wearing off, and the sight of the faceless Harbinger had triggered his descent into madness. A horrifying grin stretched across his face, wider than any of the smiling faces we'd seen outside. He lunged at us, a grotesque parody of a human, his screams replaced by a high-pitched, manic laugh. Reacting instinctively, I shoved Emily out of the way, my shoulders slamming into the John-turned monster. He stumbled back, his grin faltering for a moment. The Harbinger remained impassive, watching the scene unfold with a detached amusement. This was it. My sacrifice, twisted by fate. A wave of despair threatened to engulf me, but then, John's manic laugh died down, replaced by a gasp. He clutched his throat, his eyes bulging in terror. The smile on his face began to shrink, the skin around his mouth crinkling back into a grimace of pain. Then, with a final, choked gasp, John slumped to the floor, his body turning an unnatural shade of gray. The horrific grin vanished, replaced by a peaceful stillness. For a moment, there was an unsettling silence. Then, the Harbinger spoke. An unexpected turn, he rasped, his voice laced with a hint of surprise. It seems the harvest can reject the unwilling. He turned his empty gaze towards me. And you, he said, his voice low and predatory, you offered yourself willingly. A curious development. Before I could react, the Harbinger extended a skeletal hand, his fingers tipped with long, black claws. A surge of primal fear flooded my body, but there was no turning back. I steeled myself and met his gaze. Do it, I said, my voice hoarse. The Harbinger chuckled again, a chilling sound that resonated in the chamber. He lowered his hand, his claws coming to rest on my chest. A cold, searing pain ripped through me as the claws tore through my clothes and dug into my flesh. I screamed, a raw, primal scream that echoed through the lighthouse. The pain intensified, blooming outwards from the point of contact. Visions flashed before my eyes, the smiling faces, the fog, Emily's frightened expression. But then, amidst the chaos, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. It wasn't pain, it was a transformation. A power surged through me, a dark energy that resonated with the entity before me. The Harbinger retracted his claws, a satisfied smile, or what I imagined to be a smile, playing on his smooth, featureless head. The yellow glow in the room dimmed, and the oppressive air lifted. I looked down at myself, expecting to see gruesome wounds, but my body seemed unharmed. You are one of us now, the Harbinger rasped. A vessel for the harvest. Spread the smile, and the fog will follow. Feed the entity. His voice, once full of power, now sounded weak, almost pleading. The dark energy that had coursed through me moments ago had begun to ebb. No, I said, my voice surprisingly strong. The transformation had changed me, but it hadn't extinguished my will. A wave of defiance coursed through me. I won't be your puppet. The Harbinger recoiled, his empty eyes widening in surprise. The transformation had given me a power he hadn't anticipated, a corrupted version of his own. He drew back, his form flickering like a dying candle. This isn't over, he rasped, his voice a mere shadow of its former power. You cannot defy the harvest. With a final, chilling whisper, the Harbinger dissolved into a cloud of black smoke that dissipated through the window, leaving behind an ominous silence. I stood there, panting, the echoes of my scream still ringing in my ears. Emily, her face etched with concern, rushed to my side. She examined my chest, searching for wounds, but found none. The transformation was internal, a dark power coursing through my veins. Are you all right? She whispered, her voice trembling. I looked out the window at the receding fog, the first rays of dawn painting the sky a hopeful orange. The town was still shrouded in mist, but the oppressive feeling was gone. I don't know, I said, my voice a low rumble. But I know what I have to do. We stumbled out of the lighthouse, the pre-dawn light painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and hopeful orange. The fog, once thick and impenetrable, seemed thinner, dissipating with the retreating darkness. A sense of cautious optimism filled me, a fragile hope that the nightmare might be ending. What happened in there? Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. The trauma of witnessing John's transformation and the encounter with the Harbinger was etched on her face. I hesitated, searching for the right words. Explaining the feeling of dark power surging through me, the twisted bargain I'd unwittingly made, felt impossible. It's complicated, I finally said. But the entity is weakened. For now. The town was a scene of post-apocalyptic calm. Cars lay abandoned, doors hanging open. Curtains remained drawn on windows, a testament to the fear that still gripped the residents. We moved cautiously, calling out names, hoping to find survivors. The first sign of life came from behind a boarded-up grocery store. A muffled cry echoed from inside. We forced open the door to find a group huddled together, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson from down the street, a young couple with a tearful baby, and a few others. Relief washed over their faces when they saw us. We thought everyone was. Mrs. Peterson trailed off, tears welling up in her eyes. We explained what had happened, omitting the details of my transformation. There were gasps of disbelief and cries of joy. The fog, they said, was already receding, the oppressive feeling lifted. It seemed the hold of the Harbinger was weakening, news of the lighthouse and the entity spread quickly. Hope flared in the hearts of the townspeople. People emerged from their homes, tentative smiles replacing the haunted expressions of the past few days. Recovery would be slow, the scars deep, but at least they could begin to rebuild. The following days were a blur of activity. We, the survivors from the lighthouse, became a makeshift council, coordinating relief efforts, checking on the elderly, and dispelling the last remnants of fear. Emily's medical expertise proved invaluable as she treated those traumatized by the incident. As for me, I remained an enigma. The dark power thrummed within me, a constant reminder of the bargain I had made. I wasn't sure what I was now, but I felt different. Stronger, sharper, with a chilling sense of detachment that worried me. One night, I found myself drawn to the lighthouse. The fog had completely vanished, revealing the vast expanse of the ocean under a stardusted sky. Standing on the walkway, I felt a connection to the entity, a faint tug at the edges of my consciousness. Then, a whisper echoed in my mind, as clear as day. Spread the smile. Feed the hunger. A shiver ran down my spine. Was this the price of my freedom? Was I destined to become another vessel for the Harbinger's twisted harvest? I clenched my fists, the darkness within me warring with the remnants of who I used to be. No, I growled, the sound low and guttural. I wouldn't be a puppet. I would find a way to sever the connection, to cleanse myself of this dark power. The whisper faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. Looking out at the endless ocean, I knew the fight wasn't over. The Harbinger might be weakened, but it wasn't gone. And somewhere within me, a part of me, corrupted by the dark energy, craved the harvest, the chilling smiles it demanded.